We're in week 2 of the series, and we're talking about how you can have a real faith that is alive, that is active, that is not just a copy of other Christians, but is a faith that you can claim and own as your own. And it can be something that infiltrates every other part of your life. It's not a knockoff. It's not just based on what you see other people doing or what you think Christians should do, but it's based on following Jesus himself and how that infiltrates the rest of your life. But I have a question, and it's a really important question, okay? If we're going to understand anything in the rest of the series, you have to know the answer to this question, and the answer to your question will change your perspective on this. Have any of you ever had to share a room with a sibling before? You still do? How many of you still have to share a room with a sibling? Okay? Right? It's not fun, right? Because I had to do that all during my elementary years, almost, until like 3rd or 4th grade. I had to share a room with my brother, and here's the thing, like, you can have clashing personalities, right? And you gotta, one of you may be clean, one of you may be messy. How many of you, you're the clean person in the room? How many of you are the messy person that you gotta share the room? Everybody hates you. So, no, I'm just kidding. Like, maybe that's a little harsh. But nobody likes the messy person when they're the clean person. And the messy person looks at the clean person and goes, and that bothers the clean person, right? So maybe that's it. Maybe you would like to sleep and they like to stay up, so that's difficult because you're trying to go to sleep. Or any of you have siblings that snore? It's like, or sleep talk. I knew a guy in college that would have night terrors and would literally like punch holes in the wall in his sleep in the middle of the night. It was freaky stuff. He was on my dorm floor for a while, so he was like, hey guys, just warning, you know. It was, anyway. So, or maybe if you want to listen to music while you get ready, maybe there's clashing, like, don't listen, turn that junk off, right? I want to listen to my own thing, right? There's tensions that come with sharing a room, and I'm sorry if I hit a tension spot with some of you just now, but I understand the struggle. The struggle is real. It's tough to have to share things, especially your living space. And I remember when I finally got to have my own room, decorated how I want, you know, like I could have music on that I want. I also got a guitar around that time, so I could blare it as loud as I wanted, and I did. And so they didn't even share the room with me. They had to deal with that. But maybe you feel the same way about your room situation, or maybe it's something else. Maybe you're thinking, I can't wait till I can get a car of my own, right? Where I can be like an adult almost and drive where I want. Or maybe you're thinking, I can't wait till I can go on a trip with my friends and, you know, we can just do what we want to do. Maybe you're thinking, I can't wait till I'm old enough to move out and have my own dorm or apartment space, right? Get away from the siblings, get away from parents, get away from any other person trying to tell me what I have to do, and I can make my own decisions, right? Anybody watch the old SNL, like, I'm an adult, like, so I threw it on the ground. Like, it's back when SNL was decent. So, we all kind of have that independence because you guys are in high school. You're almost adults. You're at the stage where you are figuring out your own style. You're figuring out your own hobbies. You're figuring out the things that you want to do, and your own individuality, right? Apart from what your parents just bought you at Walmart when you were like that. I lived off Walmart clothes until I went and I was engaged. So I was a late bloomer. I didn't really have much style, and I was okay with that because I don't care what people think. I want to be comfortable. And then I'm at Chelsea, and she's like, you got to look presentable. So she helped me in that department. Maybe you're just ready to grow and move on and have your own independence, because part of growing up is developing those things, learning how to navigate your own independence and come up with all the things that make you. It's the parts of your identity that you are figuring out. And faith is a part of that. Part of growing up is developing a personal faith of your own as well. That is not just copied off of your parents or copied off of your friends growing up or copied off your small group leader. It's faith that you can own. And so that's, we're going to be talking obviously about part 2 of that today. But keep in mind a distinction I'm making. It's a personal faith of your own, meaning that I'm saying a faith of your own, and that does not equal a faith on your own. Does that make sense? That little preposition there is incredibly important. A personal faith of your own, not a personal faith on your own. Meaning, like, it's not something you just go into the wilderness in the deep, dark woods of Trafalgar and figure out on your own, and you come out enlightened. You're like, I know what my faith is all about because God spoke to me, right? It's not how it works like that. You guys know that, right? But sometimes we think we have to, maybe we confuse going off to camp in the summer and then coming back with that clarity, and you're like, I know what God wants, but the difference is you're with people there, not like off by yourself. That's how, religions like Islam happened with Muhammad or Joseph Smith. They all have these visions in private, but that's not how God usually communicates. It's usually through people. And so part of developing a personal faith of your own is part of that growing up process. And it's not something you do on your own. You can't just nix go into small group. You can't just stop listening to sermons or skip out altogether on all that kind of good stuff. You have to be a part of people. So experiencing faith for yourself isn't the same as experiencing faith by yourself. Does that make sense? Experiencing faith for yourself is not the same as experiencing faith by yourself. In other words, there's, obviously private time that you have with God and personal faith development that happens on your own, but it's not exclusive to that. It's not something that you do by yourself. Usually the faith that is, the faith development that happens by yourself, it was spurred on because of conversations you had with other people or something like that. So when I was younger, most of the Christians that I knew were older, right? Most of the Christians that I knew that I learned anything from were older, right? So that would be my parents. That would be my Sunday school teacher. That would be my kids' church person. Those are the people that I learned Christianity and faith from. I still remember in 4th grade, sitting in class, and each week we had to practice memorizing the books of the Bible in order. And I remember I had a good memory, so I could memorize all those things, but it didn't mean I had a really active faith or anything. It just meant I was good at memorizing things. But I remember from an early age, I learned all the things I knew about faith from the people that were older than me, the people that taught me. And I remember one person that made it extremely real for me was a guy named Patton. And I was in middle school, and Patton moved to my school. And I grew up, I've told you guys before, in a Christian school. But even in Christian school and in church, there are people who don't always act Christian. And that was the same case where I was at. And so, but even amongst a Christian school, Patton stood out as someone to admire, someone who just you gravitate towards, because he's just a nice guy, and not nice in the sense that they're quiet and they don't really tick anybody off, so they're a nice guy, but nice in the sense that he went out of his way to make you feel exceptional. He went out of his way to make you just kind of feel good about yourself. He went out of his way to just be the kind of guy that everybody wants to be. I remember when I started to get to know Patton, I was like, this dude is solid. This guy, if everybody were like him, man, we'd have no more issues in this world, right? You guys know people like that they're like, I want to be like that guy. And Patton was that for me. He was incredibly mature for his age. I never, in all my years growing up with him, I never saw him angry. I saw him angry, but never angry in the sense that you know when you're angry and you're embarrassed about how angry you were and how you acted when you're angry. I saw him angry, and it was more like a righteous anger. I saw him growing up when his mom got cancer, and he stayed faithful in the midst of all that, and he was somebody that I admired a lot because I saw him go through not just an easy life, but go through difficult times and come out strong. And he was the kind of guy that I just gravitated towards. And as we got to know each other, in fact, in high school, he and I, we connected first off because we played basketball together. And so he was not only just incredibly nice, but he was also incredibly talented. And our senior year, we were both co-captains of the team. And he was one of those, when you see people in leadership, you learn a lot about their character. You see how they treat people below them, how they treat people above them, and how they lead you as maybe a peer. And I remember he was always even-tempered. Sports have a way of bringing out people's most competitive nature, and maybe they're angry. So, ref, call that, right? Or you just see them, you've seen people angry in sports, right? Most competitive athletes get that way. I certainly got that way. If I was mad at my teammates, I'd throw it from checking me, catch the ball, don't freaking turn it over again, right? And I'd be like, going down the court and like yelling at my teammates. Patton was like, hey, let's remember, they're coming on this side, they're running this defense, you need to watch out for that. And as long as we just continue running it and look out for each other, be aware of your situation, we're going to be just fine. And he would even the tempers. He could diffuse the situation. But he was respectful in the way that he led. He led through service. Sounds a lot like Jesus. He wasn't afraid to get his own feet dirty. And he led, so he led well for those under him, and he led well for those above him, like our coach or the referees. But just the way he would conduct himself, the way he would talk to people, he was just on a different level than everybody else. And Patton, in fact, he influenced me so much that he's the kind of person that like was not real big into social media, because social media started coming out when I was in high school. I didn't get a Facebook until my senior year of high school, and that was when Facebook was like the only social media other than MySpace, which nobody used anymore at that point. And Patton just never really jumped on that train. So it's been over 10 years since I've ever interacted with him. But he's still the person in my mind that when I think about the way I want to be and I want people to see me and how I want people to feel when they interact with me, I think about Patton. Because he was just one of those stand-up guys that everybody wants to be around, and that he was genuinely kind and took his faith seriously. There was one time we were having a conversation, and he was talking about, this was as a senior in high school, and it was the only time I heard him talk about a girl like he had a crush on her. Like, in my mind, I was like, Patton's like so holy, he's not even interested in dating or anything right now. And he was like, man, I made a commitment to myself a long time ago. I wasn't going to date in high school. I was going to wait till college and all this kind of stuff. I was like, that's commendable. I didn't do that. And I could have avoided a lot of pain if I had done that. But he was like, but Kelly, man, if I were not in high school, I'd date her in a heartbeat, right? And it was the only time I ever heard him talk about things like that. And it was just like sweet, like it was innocent and that kind of thing. He talked about people respectfully, and he talked about people in a way, and he had the kind of spiritual maturity to know what was healthy for him and what was not, even though he might want something. He had the longevity to be able to see what his life wanted to be like, and he was following God's calling in his life in a way that none of my other peers were doing, in a way that I wasn't doing. And so Patton was one of those guys that I really admired. And so he changed a lot of the way that I saw how I should handle my own faith, how I should own my faith and my own decisions, my own prayer life, my own Bible reading, all that kind of stuff. And I went to college, and I met a guy named Colby, who was on my floor. He was my RA, so he was a few years ahead of me. He led my life group, so it was like a small group, and we met every week. And he was able to give me advice through dating situations, give me advice through like personal temptations and hardships and struggles. And he was one of those that was able to just, he's a few years ahead of me and kind of, bring me under his wing and just show me what being an adult Christian looks like when I was in college. And then, Chelsea and I met, we got married, and we got to know this married couple who had graduated from Ozark, was a few years older than even Colby, but we lived in the same apartment complex. So we came from the same place. They were just a few years ahead of us. They had been married. I remember they had been married for 4 years, and Chelsea and I were newlyweds. And we're like, man, they've been married so long, right? Now Chelsea and I are going on 9 years, and I feel like we've only been married like for a couple blinks. But we hung around them all the time. I remember when we made we made like this fried egg, avocado, cheese breakfast sandwich with bacon for dinner one night, because we were all broke young adults and living in this really cheap apartment, and we just ate like random stuff all the time. But it was so good, and I remember us just like talking about stuff and watching our favorite TV shows. We would hang out all the time, but we learned so much about Christianity, so much about what it looks like to be a young married couple trying to grow with each other in our faith. The point of all these people interacting with me in my life that I want to demonstrate to you is the reality that you can't do it alone. Part of coming into your own in your own faith development means you have to have people that walk alongside you, that walk with you, that show you the way, and that give room for you to mess up and be able to encourage you through that as well. I can easily look at these relationships and see how God was moving through all those. See how God was teaching me very specific things that I needed for that season in life. And God still continues to put people in our lives that are essential for our faith to grow. Whenever you hear a story about someone's journey towards God, it always has to do with a relationship that brought them along. I'm not talking about just their relationship with God, because obviously that's part of it, but when you hear people talk about their faith journey, about their relationship with God, about their own faith development, there's always a relationship with somebody else in their story that pushes their story along, right? There's always somebody, it could be someone that maybe they had just one conversation with, and it changed them, and it was what they needed. Or maybe you've been in that situation. Maybe it was a series of conversations where over time, like, your heart was hard, but after a series of conversations and getting to know that person and them, developing some relational rapport in your life, the series of conversations started to change you. Or maybe it was someone that you just watched and observed from a distance, but you saw that the way they lived was different and you wanted to emulate that. Or maybe it was one of those relationships that brought you here. Maybe you had someone invite you to church. Maybe you had somebody that brought you along on the journey, and you started to see a vision for what your life could look like and what your faith could be. And to put it simply, the people around us affect our faith. Just like the right people can move our faith in the right direction, the wrong people can also move our faith in the wrong direction. And I think you all know this, right? This is your friend. Your mom always said, careful who your friends are. You'll become who your friends are. Or you heard your parents say stuff like that maybe growing up. My parents told me that all the time. And I can't emphasize how true that is in every season of life, but especially as you guys are in high school approaching adulthood. Like, having the right people in your life can change your life, and having the wrong people in your life can change your life. So if people can affect our faith, we want to be around the kind of people that can affect our faith in a positive way. So if the people around us have a huge impact on our own faith, then how do we find the right people who can help us? How do we prevent ourselves from being affected by the wrong kinds of people? So this is the big question, because most of you know everything I've already said. You know that you need good people around you. You know that you should avoid bad influences, right? Whether that's actual people that you spend time with because of school or sports, or because they're your friends and you hang out all the time, you spend the night at each other's house and hang out, or if it's people that you follow online or listen to on whatever, or watch on YouTube, whatever people you lend your ear to, those people influence you. The people that you put around you have an effect on you. So how do we find the right ones? How do we make sure that we are building our circles around us with people that can influence us in a positive direction? And that's the big question. Because most people, they know the reality that you have to have good influences, but the hard part is finding those right influences. So I want to start by sharing a little piece of wisdom from a guy named Solomon. If you guys have grown up in church, you know who Solomon is. Somebody just tell me, who's Solomon? This is the part where I make sure you're still awake. What were you saying? The wisest man alive, right? He's not alive anymore, but at the time, wisest man, God said that no one would be wiser. And he was what? What was his role? He was a powerful person. He was a king. Thanks, Calvin. Excellent job. So King Solomon, the wise, is what he was known as. He was known for being incredibly wise, gave great advice. He was a great judge in solving disputes. You can just read through the Old Testament and read about him. But he also wrote a lot of the Old Testament. He wrote the Songs of Solomon, which maybe wait till you're older to read that one. Or he wrote he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, all about the meaning of life. And he also wrote a lot of the book of Proverbs. And actually, this is what he writes in Proverbs 13, chapter 20. It says, walk with thee. This is where I'm going to make sure you're paying attention again, too. It says, walk with the wise and become wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Somebody explain to me what that means in simple terms. Pretend I'm Michael Scott and I'm 5 years old. Explain that to me. Walk with the smart people, you become smart. Walk with the dumb people, you become dumb. And hurt. right? Because you suffer harm. So hang out with the wise. That's actually pretty much word for word what my next slide is. Hang with the wise, you'll become smarter and do life better. Hang out with fools and you'll get hurt. Whether that's like physically because they're jumping off of buildings and you're like this is a legit thing that has happened in Chelsea's life because she was around the wrong influences for a while in college, and they were literally jumping from building to building in downtown Joplin, which was, yes, dumb. So you could physically get hurt, or you could get emotionally hurt because you hang around the wrong kinds of people and they backstab you, or you try to get maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend sooner than you should and they hurt you. Hang around fools and you'll get hurt. So we can all see like the celebrities who like 15, 16, 17 were on Disney Channel and how cute, and and then they started growing up and hanging with bad people, and you would find out like, oh, another DUI, another celebrity who's a child star who's now in rehab again, right? Justin Bieber came out on the other side though. Yeah, but I'm glad we can say that now. But you guys get the idea. Yeah. It was rough there for a minute. So we know this story is true. And the Apostle Paul, he talks about this a lot, even in the New Testament. This is what he says to the church in Corinth. He says, do not be misled, for, maybe your parents have said this, bad what? Company corrupts good character, right? Basically, if you want to move in a better direction, hang out with people who want the same thing. Maybe your parents told you that when they were giving you dating advice, right? Why are you dating someone who's not a Christian? They're not even moving in the same direction as you, right? Sometimes, in church, if you've grown up in church, you may have heard the term missionary dating. It means you're dating someone who's not a Christian, but you're going to change them and they're going to become... That's usually not what happens, by the way, just FYI. But if you want to move in a better direction, hang out with people who want the same thing. This goes for dating relationships. This goes for friends. This goes for everything, right? Hang out with people who want the same thing. The wrong influences will impact you in ways that will result in negative outcomes and negative behaviors. You guys get the idea. But you've, I'm sure, seen this play out before. You've had that friend who was hanging around that guy that you knew was bad news, that gets into trouble, and you maybe warned them, but they were either naive about how bad that person was of an influence, or they knew it, but they thought they could change them, and they were naive in that sense. But you saw them start to hang out with that person, and before long, your friends started doing things that your friend wouldn't do. And how do I know this is true? Because this is the old tale that's been told 1,000 times, that when you hang out with fools, you suffer harm, right? It's a timeless principle that's universally true. So walk with the wise, you'll grow wise, but bad company will corrupt good morals. So yes, and I do want to clarify. Yes, Jesus calls us to hang around people that aren't Christians too, the people that don't believe the same thing. He calls us to hang out with bad influences. Jesus went to the house of sinners and tax collectors all the time, right? I'm not saying that you can't have non-Christian friends, because you should. I'm saying you got to be careful who you let in your inner circle, who you allow to have the biggest voice in your life. And how do you know if they have the biggest voice in your life? How much time do you spend with them compared to the influences you probably should be spending time with? Right. You can kind of sense what that should be, and if you don't, ask your small group leader. But we all know what it's like to be misled. So maybe that means you're careful about who you let in your inner circle. So you don't have to date just anybody. You don't have to just trust everybody's advice. I promise you that if you Google an answer to a big life question, you will probably get an answer that's not the most healthy. So it's good to have people in your life that can actually help you filter what a better answer is. But Solomon, going back to him, he actually says this in a better way than I ever could. And he says it in later in Proverbs chapter 27, I think. Yeah, 27 verse 17. He says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man or one person sharpens another. Right? You guys know how this works, right? Because maybe you guys have a set of steak knives in your kitchen, or your parents do. Maybe not in your room, because that'd be creepy. But it comes with that little metal rod, and you sharpen it. You guys know what I'm talking about? What? That's what the metal rod is for, to sharpen your knives, because they go dull over time. Yeah, it's crazy. It's awesome, though, because it's metal sharpens metal. And he's saying as iron sharpens iron, maybe you saw Pirates of the Caribbean, you saw them on the little bike thing where it like sharpens the sword, and what happens? Like the metal is causing friction against it, it's sharpening the blade. And this was my parents' marriage verse. And my dad told me this growing up. He said, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And sometimes sparks fly. Because sometimes, as you're sharpening each other, you have to have the hard conversations. You have to say the things that aren't fun. You have to have the hard truths come out sometimes. But when you're able to do that, it will change everything. It will sharpen you. And you need people in your life that can do that. Basically what I'm saying is this: real faith grows with other people. Real faith grows with other people. And when we try to fake our faith, when we try to just copy everybody else's faith, the real us misses out on the chance to be sharpened and to get stronger. And sometimes faith feels less real because we are being less real. Does that make sense? When we're trying to put on a face and act like we've got it all together, we're actually missing out on the sharpening that could happen. Sometimes the sharpening hurts. Sometimes sparks fly, but we need it. This is why small groups is such a big deal. So maybe for you, that just means you need to commit to showing up more consistently so that you can be there for your group and they can be here for you. Because you need to create that community. And you have one thing in common that can defy all other interests you may not have in common, and that is Jesus. And so maybe you need to show it more. Maybe you need to show it more mentally and not just go through the motions. Maybe you need some one-on-one time with people that can actually sit across from you at a table, either at Starbucks or at Coffee House 5 or DQ, and they can sharpen you. Or maybe you need someone who could really use some encouragement. Maybe you know someone who, like, it's not you that needs sharpened, but it's you that needs to help do the sharpening through love and grace and truth. But real faith grows with other people. So if you want to have a faith that moves from being counterfeit to being alive and active, to being real and authentic, and to be yours to own, you have to do it with other people. So let me pray, and we'll go to small groups, and you guys can finish the conversation there.